Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is giving honor to the great Charles George Gordon, who I like to call the Saint of the Sudan, the Savior of the Sudan, the General of the Sudan. This was such a great man who dedicated his life and everything he had to ending slavery in the Sudan and Egypt. He dedicated everything to it. He was a man with who had such high morality, who had such a high morale with his Victorian values. He did not stand for anything other than treating people equally and with respect. And he went above and beyond everything in his power and dedicated his life to trying to establish that in the Sudan and Egypt and ending slavery, trying to, in his attempt to end slavery. But he was always faced with corruption. When you're such a good person in this world, it's hard to fight against corrupt people who are also fighting against you from all angles. So Charles George Gordon, uh, born January 28th, 1833, and died January 26th, 1885. He was a British Army officer and administrator. He saw action in the Crimean War as an officer of the British Army. However, he made his military reputation in China, where he was placed in command of the ever victorious army, a force of Chinese soldiers led by European officers, which was instrumental in putting down the Taplin Rebellion, regularly defeated much larger forces. For these accomplishments, he was given the nickname Chinese Gordan in honors of the Emperor of China of British. Let's get down to his works in Africa, in the Sudan and Egypt. So to highlight one example of General Gordon's high morale and Victorian values, in this one's incident, let me give you an example. In Khartoum, Gordon attended a dinner with the Governor General Ismail Ayub Pasha, entertained with barely dressed belly dancers whom one of Gordon's officers drunkenly attempted to have sex with, leading to a disgusted Gordon walking out, saying he was shocked that Ayub allowed these things to happen in his palace. So obviously, these women were forced to dance naked or whatever, and some drunk man tried to rape her or whatever. He was Gordon was disgusted by this. So let's go a little further down. From Khartoum, he proceeded up the White Nile to Gondokoro. During this time in Sudan, Gordon was much involved in attempting to suppress the slave trade while struggling against corrupt and insufficient Egyptian bureaucracy that had no interest in suppressing the slave trade. Gordon soon learned that his own superior, the Governor General of the Sudan, Ismail Ayub Pasha, was deeply involved in the slave trade and doing everything within his power to sabotage Gordon's anti slavery work by denying him supplies and leaking information to the slavers. Gordon, despite his position as an official in the Ottoman Empire, found the Ottoman Egyptian system of rule inherently oppressive and cruel, coming to increasingly, coming to increasing conflict with the very system he was supposed to uphold. Later stating about his time in Sudan, I taught the natives that they had the right to exist. The Ottoman Empire power was exercised via a system of institutionalized corruption where officials looted their providence via heavy taxes and by demanding kickbacks known as baksheesh. Gordon established a close rapport with the African peoples of Equatoria, such as the Nur and the Dinka. He had long suffered from the activity of Arab slave traders, and who naturally supported Gordon's efforts to stamp out the slave trade. The peoples of Equatoria had traditionally worshipped spirits present in nature, but were steadily being converted to Christianity by missionaries from Europe and the United States, which further encouraged Gordan in his efforts as the governor of Equatoria. Notwithstanding his position working for the Egyptian government, saw himself as doing God's work in Ecuador. Okay, as governor, Gordon faced a variety of challenges. Besides working to end slavery, Gordon carried out a series of reforms such as abolishing torture and public floggings, where these opposed to the Egyptian state were flogged with a whip known as korbesh, made out of buffalo hide. These reforms that Gordon wanted would have changed the basic nature of the Ottoman Egyptian rule by replacing a system based on exploitation of the people by the state with one where the state would work for the betterment of the people. These aims eluded him. Gordon himself was honest and incorruptible, but he was almost always alone in possessing these qualities. So he was fighting this. He was mostly fighting this battle alone, and the venal and corrupt Egyptian bureaucrats usually ignored his orders when they conflicted with the chance to make money. The Europeans whom the Egyptians had hired to work as civil servants in the Sudan were no better and proved to be just as corrupt as the Egyptians. The bribes that the slave traders offered the bureaucrats to turn a blind eye to the slave trade had far more effect on the bureaucrats than did any of Gordon's orders to suppress the slave trade, which were simply ignored. Lucaro Santoni, an Italian hired by the Egyptian state to run the Sudanese post office, wrote about Gordon's time in the governor general that as his exertions were not supported by any of his subordinates, his efforts remained fruitless. This man's activity with the scientific knowledge which he possessed is doubtless able to achieve much, but unfortunately, no one backs him up, and his orders are badly carried out or altered in such a way as to render them without effect. All the Europeans, with some rare exceptions, whom he has honored with his confidence, have cheated him. So he was fighting this battle alone, trying to end slavery in the Sudan and Egypt. Reflecting these realities, Gordon had to undertake much of the administrative work himself, traveling ceaselessly and constantly all over the Sudan via camel in attempts to make the bureaucracy actually obey his orders, something that occurred when he was present but stopped as soon as he left. Gordon's reforming zeal made him popular with the ordinary people of the Sudan, as one observer noted that whenever he left and entered the governor's palace in Khartoum, government officials, consular agents, and native people awaited him in large numbers. They celebrated his arrival with a indescribable whatever it say uproar. So he risked his life, and I mean, he was there basically on the. He had this one divine mission, he said, from God to end slavery in the Sudan. The people that worked for him, they were corrupt. He had to make them do the work. They didn't do it while he wasn't around. Uh, he wanted to. He loved fighting in the defense of the weak, or for good causes. He wanted to die martyr. He wanted to die martyr. So that's basically the tale of C.G. Gordon, a great honorable man who, uh, you know, loved oppressed people and really tried to end slavery with such a great passion. He hated slavery, which was a popular thing around the world at the time. So Just want to highlight what a great person he was. The world needs more people like him. In honor of Charles Gordon.